Today's class will be given by His Grace Shivananda Prabhuji. I hand over the call to Lalita Mataji for introducing Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you so much Mataji for warmly welcoming everyone. Today we are very, very fortunate to have His Grace Shivananda Prabhu with us, a very senior disciple of Srila Prabhupada. He was initiated back early in 1967-68 and he was the first one to go to Europe to spread the movement there. And alone in Germany, he started the center, and Srila Prabhupada visited there for 3 weeks to be with him, and Prabhuji used to share a lot of nice personal pastimes with him. Since then, Prabhuji and Mataji has been serving in different ISKCON temples in different capacities. So we are very, very fortunate to have his association. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for giving us your valuable time and association. Right now, Prabhuji is serving in Srila Prabhupada village, which is in North Carolina. And I have lots to say, but I hear from Srila Prabhuji, and welcome, and please take over the call, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
All right, I'm here. Please accept my obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to your spiritual master. All glories to all of you also. I was asked to give class this morning on Canto 4, Chapter 1, Text 4. So I'll chant the usual prayers that I usually chant before I give Bhagavatam class here at the temple. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayat. Before uttering this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we offer our respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. And I also offer my very humble and very respectful obeisances to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who has translated and commented upon this Srimad Bhagavatam for our benefit. Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttam shloke bhakti bhavati naistiki. A regular attendance at the Srimad Bhagavatam class, and by rendering of service to the pure devotees, everything that is inauspicious within the heart is practically destroyed to nil. And loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental verses, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. So this morning, we're reading from Canto 4, which is the creation of the fourth order. This is chapter number 1, the genealogical table of the daughters of Manu, and this is text number 4. What I usually do when I give, mostly I give most of the classes here in Prabhupada Village, because there's not so many devotees here. When we begin a new chapter, what I do is I have a chapter preview, and I just read the verses. Without the purports, and then that gives us kind of an idea of what's coming up. You know, and you go to the. I haven't been to a movie, so many years. I'm going to go to the Hare Krishna movie at the end of March. It's going to be showing in High Point here, so that's about the first movie I've been to. Many years. But usually what they have is they have previews, and that gives shows people an idea of what's this particular film coming up, and then they hopefully everybody will come to that one. And anyway, so a preview is of this chapter, the genealogical table of the daughters of Manu, and I'll just read the verses, and then we'll deal with verse number 4 and maybe verse number 5 also. Sri Maitreya said, Swayambhuva Manu begot 3 daughters in his wife Satarupa, and their names were Akuti, Devahuti, and Prasuti. Akuti had 2 brothers, but in spite of her brothers, King Swayambhuva Manu handed her over to Prajapati Ruchi on the condition that the son born of her be returned to Manu as his son. This he did in consultation with his wife Satarupa. Ruchi, who was very powerful in his Brahminical qualifications and was appointed as one of the progenitors of the living entities, begot 1 son and 1 daughter by his wife Akuti. Of the 2 children born of Akuti, the male child was directly an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his name was Jagya, which is another name of Lord Vishnu. The female child was a partial incarnation of Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, the eternal consort of Lord Vishnu. Swayambhuva Manu very gladly brought home the beautiful boy named Jagya, and Ruchi, his son-in-law, kept with him the daughter Dakshina. The lord of the ritualistic performance of Jagya later married Dakshina, who was anxious to have the personality of Godhead as her husband. And in this wife, the Lord was also very much pleased to beget 12 children. The 12 boys born of Jagya and Dakshina, were named Tosha, Pratosha, Santosha, Bhadra, Shanti, Idaspati, Idma, Kavi, Vibhu, Svana, Sudeva, and Rochan. During the time of Swayambhuva Manu, these sons all became the demigods, collectively named the Tushchitas. Marichi became the head of the 7 rishis, and Jagya became the king of the demigods, Indra. Swayambhuva Manu's 2 sons, Priyavrata and Uttanapada, became very powerful kings, and their sons and grandsons spread all over the 3 worlds during that period. So in this particular section of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we're hearing about the population of the universe. So there's different orders in the creation of the universe and the creation of the population in the universe. I'm assuming that probably the first order is Lord Brahma, and then the mental sons of Brahma, and so now we're dealing with the daughters of Manu. My dear son, Swayambhuva Manu handed over his very dear daughter Devahuti to Kardama Muni. I have already spoken to you about them, and you have heard about them almost in full. So in last canto, we were dealing with Kardama Muni and all the things that were there. Swayambhuva Manu handed over his daughter Prashuti to the son of Brahma named Daksha, who was also one of the progenitors of the living entities. The descendants of Daksha are spread throughout the 3 worlds. You have already been informed about the 9 daughters of Kardama Muni, who were handed over to 9 different sages. I shall now describe the descendants of those 9 daughters. Please hear from me. Kardama Muni's daughter, Kala, who was married to Marichi, gave birth to 2 children whose names were Kashyapa and Purnima. Their descendants are spread all over the world. My dear Vidura, of the 2 sons, Kashyapa and Purnima begot 3 children, namely Viraj, Vishvaga, and Devakulya. Of these 3, Devakulya was the water which washed the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, and which later on transformed into the Ganges of the heavenly planets. That's interesting. Anasuya, the wife of Atri Muni, gave birth to 3 very famous sons, Soma, Dattatreya, and Durvasa, who were partial representations of Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva, and Lord Brahma. Soma was a partial representation of Lord Brahma, Dattatreya was a partial representation of Lord Vishnu, and Durvasa was a partial representation of Lord Shiva. After hearing this, Vidura inquired from Maitreya, My dear master, how is it that the 3 deities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, who are the creator, maintainer, and destroyer of the whole creation, became the offspring of the wife of Atri Muni. So we're also involved here in this particular section of with a conversation between Vidura and Maitreya, and these things are being explained. Maitreya said, when Lord Brahma ordered Atri Muni to create generations after marrying Anasuya, Atri Muni and his wife went to perform severe austerities in the valley of the mountain known as Riksha. In that mountain valley flows a river named Nirvindya. On the bank of the river are many ashoka trees and other plants full of palasa flowers, and there is always the sweet sound of water flowing from a waterfall. The husband and wife reached that beautiful place. There the great sage concentrated his mind by yogic breathing exercises and thereby controlling all attachment. He remained standing on one leg only, eating nothing but air, and stood there on one leg for 100 years. Can you imagine? He was thinking, may the Lord of the universe, of whom I have taken shelter, kindly be pleased to offer me a son exactly like him. While Atri Muni was engaged in these severe austerities, a blazing fire came out of his head by virtue of his breathing exercise, and that fire was seen by the three principal deities of the three worlds. At that time, the three deities approached the hermitage of Atri Muni, accompanied by the denizens of the heavenly planets, such as the celestial beauties, the Gandharvas, the Siddhas, the Vidyadharas, and the Nagas. Thus they entered the ashram of the great sage, who had become famous by his austerities. The sage was standing on one leg, but as soon as he saw the three deities had appeared before him, he was so pleased to see them all together that despite great difficulty he approached them on one leg. Thereafter he began to offer prayers to the three deities, who were seated on different carriers, a bull, a swan, and Garuda, and who held in their hands a drum, kusha grass, and a discus. The sage offered them his respects by falling down like a stick. Atri Muni was greatly pleased to see the three devas were gracious towards him. His eyes were dazzled by the effulgence of their bodies, and therefore he closed his eyes for the time being. But since his heart was already attracted by the deities, somehow or other he gathered his senses, and with folded hands and sweet words, he began to offer prayers to the predominating deities of the universe. The great sage Atri said, O Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, and Lord Shiva, you have divided yourself into three bodies by accepting the three modes of material nature, as you do in every millennium for the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all of you, and beg to inquire whom of you three I have called by my prayer. I called for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, desiring a son like him, and I thought of him only. But although he is far beyond the mental speculation of man, all three of you have come here. Kindly let me know how you have come, for I am greatly bewildered about this. The great sage Maitreya continued. Upon hearing Atri Muni speak in that way, the three great deities smiled, and they replied in the following sweet words. The three deities told Atri Muni, Dear Brahmana, you are perfect in your determination, and therefore as you have decided, so it will happen. It will not happen otherwise. We are all the same person upon whom you were meditating, and therefore we have all come to you. You will have sons who will represent a partial manifestation of our potency, and because we desire all good fortune for you, those sons will glorify your reputation throughout the world. Thus, while the couple looked on, the three deities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara, disappeared from that place after bestowing upon Atri Muni the benediction. Thereafter, from the partial representation of Brahma, the moon god was born of them. From the partial representation of Vishnu, the great mystic Dattatreya was born, and from the partial representation of Shankara, Lord Shiva, Durvasa Muni was born. Now you may hear from me of the many sons of Angira. Angira's wife, Shraddha, gave birth to 4 daughters, named Sinivali, Kuhu, Raka, and Anumati. Besides these 4 daughters, she also had another 2 sons. One of them was known as Uttataya, and the other was the learned scholar Brihaspati. Pulasya begot in his wife Havirbu one son of the name Agastya, who in his next birth became Daragni. Besides him, Pulasya begot another very great and saintly son, whose name was Vishrava. Vishrava had 2 wives. The first wife was Idavida, from whom Kuvera, the master of all yakshas, was born, and the next wife was named Keshini, from whom 3 sons were born, Ravana, Kumbhakarna, and Bibhishan. Gati, the wife of the sage Pulaha, gave birth to 3 sons, named Karmashreshta, Variyan, and Sahishnu, and all of them were great sages. Kratu's wife, Kriya, gave birth to 60,000 great sages. Wow. Named the Valakilyas. All these sages were greatly advanced in spiritual knowledge, and their bodies were illuminated by such knowledge. The great sage Vashishta begot in his wife Urja, sometimes called Arundhati, 7 spotlessly great sages, headed by the sage named Chitraketu. The names of these 7 sages are as follows: Chitraketu, Sarochi, Viraja, Mitra, Urbana, Vasubhijana, and Juman. Some other very competent sons were born from Vashishta's other wife. Chiti, wife of the sage Atharva, gave birth to a son named Asvashira by accepting a great vow named Dajjanacha. Now you may hear from me about the descendants of the sage Bhrigu. The sage Bhrigu was highly fortunate. In his wife, known as Gyati, he begot 2 sons named Datta and Vidatta, and 1 daughter named Shri, who was very much devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The sage Meru had 2 daughters named Ayati and Niyati, whom he gave in charity to Datta and Vidatta. Ayati and Niyati gave birth to 2 sons, Mrikanda and Prana. From Mrikanda, Markandeya Muni was born, and from Prana, the sage Vedasira, whose son was Ushana Sukracharya, also known as Kavi. Thus, Kavi also belonged to the descendants of the Bhrigu dynasty. My dear Vidura, the population of the universe was thus increased by the descendants of these sages and the daughters of Kardama. Anyone who hears the description of this dynasty with faith will be relieved from all sinful reactions. Another of Manu's daughters, known as Prasuti, married the son of Brahma named Daksha. Daksha begot 16 very beautiful daughters with lotus-like eyes in his wife Prasuti. Of these 16 daughters, 13 were given in marriage to Dharma, and 1 daughter was given to Agni. Of the remaining 2 daughters, one of the remaining 2 daughters was given in charity to the Pitriloka, where she resides very amicably, and the other was given to Lord Shiva, who is the deliverer of sinful persons from material entanglement. The names of the 13 daughters of Daksha, who were given to Dharma, are Shraddha, Maitri, Daya, Shanti, Tushti, Pushti, Kriya, Unnati, Buddhi, Meda, Titiksha, Hri, and Murti. These 13 daughters produced the following sons. Shraddha gave birth to Shubha, Maitri produced Prasad, Daya gave birth to Abhaya, Shanti gave birth to Sukha, Tushti gave birth to Mudha, Pushti gave birth to Shmaya, Kriya gave birth to Yoga, Unnati gave birth to Darpa, Buddhi gave birth to Artha, Meda gave birth to Smriti, Titiksha gave birth to Kshema, and Hri gave birth to Prashraya. Murti, a reservoir of all respectable qualities, gave birth to Sri Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. On the occasion of the appearance of Narayan, the entire world was full of joy. Everyone's mind became tranquil, and thus in all directions, the air, the river, and the mountains became pleasant. In the heavenly planets, bands began to play, and they showered flowers from the sky. The pacified sages chanted Vedic prayers, the denizens of heaven known as the Gandharvas and Kinnaras sang, the beautiful damsels of the heavenly planets danced, and in this way, at the time of the appearance of Narayan, all signs of good fortune were visible. Just at that time, great demigods like Brahma also offered their respectful prayers. The demigods said, "Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto the transcendental personality of Godhead, who created as his external energy this cosmic manifestation, which is situated in him as the air and clouds are situated in space, and who has now appeared in the form of Narayan Rishi in the house of Dharma. Let that Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is understood by truly authorized Vedic literature, and who has created peace and prosperity to destroy all calamities of the created world, be kind enough to bestow his glance upon the demigods. His merciful glance can supersede the beauty of the spotless lotus flower, which is the home of the goddess of fortune." Then Maitreya said further to Vidura, "O Vidura, thus the demigods worship with prayers the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appearing as the sage Narayan. The Lord glanced upon them with mercy, and then departed for Gandhamadana hill. That Narayan Rishi, who is a partial expansion of Krishna, has now appeared in the dynasties of Yadu and Kuru in the forms of Krishna and Arjuna respectively, to mitigate the burden of the world. The predominating deity of fire begot in his wife Svaha 3 children named Pavaka, Pavamana, and Suchi, who exist by eating the oblations offered to the fire of sacrifice. From those 3 sons, another 45 descendants were generated, who are also fire gods. The total number of fire gods is therefore 49, including the fathers and the grandfathers. These 49 fire gods are the beneficiaries of the oblations offered in the Vedic sacrificial fire by impersonalist brahmanas. The Agnisvatas, the Barhisdas, the Saumyas, and the Ajapayas are the Pittas. They are either Saganika or Niragdika. The wife of all of these Pittas is Svadha, who is the daughter of King Daksha. Svadha, who was offered to the Pittas, begot 2 daughters named Vayuna and Darini, both of whom were impersonalists and were expert in transcendental and Vedic knowledge. The 16th daughter, whose name was Sati, was the wife of Lord Shiva. She could not produce a child, although she always faithfully engaged in the service of her husband. The reason is that Sati's father Daksha used to rebuke Lord Shiva in spite of Shiva's faultlessness. Consequently, before attaining a mature age, Sati gave up her body by dint of yogic mystic power. So those are all the verses in this chapter. So we'll go back to verse number 4, and we'll deal with that one today, because that's the next one. So that gives you some idea of what's happening in this chapter. Now, in the Bible, there are many chapters which are called the begats. This one begot this one, this one begot this one. So there's, in that way, there's history. So sometimes when genealogy is spoken of, we go back to this particular section, and then you can see what families are coming from. And when we were speaking about when in the Bhagavatam class that we're having here at the temple, we're speaking about when Lord Krishna re-entered Dwarka after the battle of Kurukshetra and everything, there were genealogists who welcomed him, and then Prabhupada speaks in the purport about genealogists that they can, like a Brigu reading, like that. If you go to a Brigu reading, then the Brigu reader will have your complete genealogy where from you came many, many thousands of years ago. So these things go on. And so these are all explained here. And verse number 4 is Yastayo Purusha Shakshad Vishnur Jagya Swarupadrik Yastri Sa Dakshina Bhuter Amsa Bhutanaya Payani. Of the 2 children born of Akuti, the male child was directly an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his name was Jagya, which is another name of Lord Vishnu. The female child was a partial incarnation of Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, the eternal consort of Lord Vishnu. And there's a purport here by Srila Prabhupada. Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, is the eternal consort of Lord Vishnu. Here it is stated that both the Lord and Lakshmi, who are eternal consorts, appeared from Akuti simultaneously. Both the Lord and his consort are beyond this material creation, as confirmed by many authorities. Narayana Paro Vyaktat. Therefore, their eternal relationship cannot be changed. And Jagya, the boy born of Akuti, later married the goddess of fortune. So here we're seeing that Lord incarnation of the personality of Godhead appeared from Akuti, and the female child was a partial incarnation of Lakshmi. So it appeared that they were brother and sister. But for the Supreme Lord, and so brother and sister don't usually marry. But in this particular case, this is not an ordinary situation. And Lord Vishnu is appearing, and Lakshmi is appearing from the mother, Akuti. And so later on, they were married. So I'd like to also go on to verse 5, because there's a further explanation about this. And in that verse it says, Swayambhuva Manu very gladly brought home the beautiful boy named Jagya, and Ruchi, his son-in-law, kept with him the daughter Dakshina. And then Prabhupada has a purport here. Swayambhuva Manu was very glad to see that his daughter Akuti had given birth to both a boy and a girl. He was afraid that he would take one son, and that because of this his son-in-law Ruchi might be sorry. Thus, when he heard that a daughter was born along with the boy, he was very glad. Ruchi, according to his promise, returned his male child to Swayambhuva Manu and decided to keep the daughter, whose name was Dakshina. One of Lord Vishnu's names is Jagya, because he is the master of the Vedas. The name Jagya comes from Jagyushampati, which means Lord of all sacrifices. In the Yajur Veda, there are different ritualistic prescriptions for performing Jagyas, and the beneficiary of all such Jagyas is the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Therefore, it is stated in Bhagavad Gita 3.9, Jagartat Karmana. One should act, but one should perform one's prescribed duty only for the sake of Jagya or Vishnu. If one does not act for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or if one does not perform devotional service, then there will be reactions to all one's activities. It does not matter if the reaction is good or bad. If our activities are not dovetailed with the desire of the Supreme Lord, or if we do not act in Krishna consciousness, then we shall be responsible for the results of all of our activities. There is always a reaction to every kind of action, but if actions are performed for Jagya, there is no reaction. Thus, if one acts for Jagya, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one is not entangled in the material condition. For it is mentioned in the Vedas and also in the Bhagavad Gita that the Vedas and the Vedic rituals are all meant for understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. From the very beginning, one should try to act in Krishna consciousness. That will free one from the reactions of material activities. So here we're seeing in this particular section of the Bhagavatam that the universe is beginning to be populated. At the beginning of the universe, there was only Lord Brahma, and then Lord Brahma had 7 mental sons, and they were all Prajapatis, and they're now situated as the Saptarishis. Every evening when we go out, sometimes we go up, we see the Big Dipper, which is pointing also towards the pole star, and the Saptarishi. This is the Big Dipper is actually the Saptarishis. These are their planets, and so the idea is that from them also population came, and in this way the universe became filled up with different types of personalities and different things. So this is what we're reading about and hearing about here. So here we have a situation where Akuti, who is the son of Manu, she has a son and a daughter, and the son is named Jagya, and he's an incarnation of the Lord, and the daughter was named Dakshina, and she was a partial incarnation of Lakshmi Devi. So this is the way the populations are going on. And then Prabhupada explains here in the purport that Swayambhuva, there had been a previous arrangement with Swayambhuva Manu that when he gave his daughter to Ruchi, that he would get the son back as his son. And so he was very glad to hear that Dakshina was also born, Ruchi, and so then he wouldn't be taking away his only child. So Ruchi kept Dakshina, and then later on Dakshina and Jagya were married. And this is how things go on with the Supreme Lord. And the Srila Prabhupada is mentioning here in the purport that we were meant for performing Jagya, and of course the main Jagya that we perform in the age of Kali is the Sankirtan Jagya, the chanting of the holy name, and this is also a Jagya. And the idea is that we're meant, you and I are also meant for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and so that's what we do. In the Bhagavad Gita also it mentions that there's karma, akarma, and vikarma. Karma means actions which are good. Vikarma means actions which are sinful. And akarma means activities that don't produce any reaction at all. So the idea is that when you and I engage in the process of devotional service and we act for the satisfaction of the spiritual master and the satisfaction of Krishna, then that action doesn't produce any reaction. In other words, there's no karma. You're free of karma, or and there's no. Just like we have a little cookbook called The Higher Taste, which is a guide to karma-free eating. So in other places in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna mentions that if you don't offer your food, you're just eating sin. So all of us should be very careful to offer all of our food to Krishna, and then we can become free from any type of sinful reaction. And even if we're vegetarian, it doesn't mean that we become, just by being a vegetarian, doesn't mean we become free from karma. Because like you're taking from an apple from the tree, so you actually owe something back to that apple tree. He's giving you fruit, you have to give something back to him. So that means karma. That means karmic reactions, and it can get, karma. The interactions of karma are very complex, and we don't. We may not even understand everything that goes on in our life because of past karma. So, and people in the material world, they're performing different types of actions, and they're getting reactions to those things. And so the idea is a devotee of the Lord, you and I. you and I should all be performing devotional service because that activity doesn't produce any reactions, and we get gradually freed up from the modes of material nature. We get freed up from our karma, and then in that way we make advancement back home, back to Godhead. Prabhupada says here in the purport, there is always a reaction to every kind of action, but if actions are performed for jagya, there is no reaction. So the idea is that we're all meant to offer all of our food and engage in activities for the Supreme Lord, and so then in that way we are freed from all these very sticky actions and reactions to the laws of karma and the laws of action and reaction. And that, Prabhupada says here, from the very beginning, one should try to act in Krishna consciousness. That will free one from the reactions of material activities. So this is something that people should know about. This is something that you and I all should inform people about, that, oh, you're doing activities in the material world where you're going to get reactions to that. So, what you should do is you should work on behalf of Krishna, and then you can get completely free from reactions, because when you do something for Krishna, then there's no reaction. And so these things are very sticky, and this sticky stuff. I don't know if you've ever experienced something it's called fly paper. And fly paper is kind of like to catch flies in your home, and it is very sticky. And then when the fly comes and he lands in it, and he sticks right to it. And if you try and touch that stuff, you get caught up. It's very sticky, and it's difficult to get free from that. So similarly, in the material world, it's very difficult to get free from karma. So the idea is that you and I all need to act in devotional service, and as Prabhupada mentions in the purport Bhagavad Gita, Jagjartar Kamana, we should act for serving Lord Krishna some way or other, and in that way, then we're freed up. So this is important to note. This is important to note and important to see, and important for all of us to act in the way that we can become free from these karmic reactions and not be further bound to karma and be bound to be around for these things. So you perform good actions, that's very nice, but you have to come back to get the good reactions. So this is not very good. You and I should also all try and become free from our karmic reactions by rendering service to Krishna. In that way, we make advancement. So I'll read the verses over once again. Of the two children born of Akuti, the male child was directly an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his name was Jagya, which is another name of Lord Vishnu. The female child was a partial incarnation of Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, the eternal consort of Lord Vishnu. Swayambhuva Manu very gladly brought home the beautiful boy named Jagya, and Ruchi, his son-in-law, kept with him the daughter Dakshina. Okay, I'll stop there and see if anyone has questions, comments, corrections, observations, realizations that you'd like to mention. Hare Krishna. Anything? Any comments? So in this particular chapter, we're going to be looking forward to hearing about all these different descendants, and we may not remember all the different things, but it's nice to hear all their names and appreciate that there's a record, that the record is there of all the different personalities. And even in the course of it, we're mentioning about Ravana, Kumbhakarna, Bibhishan, all these personalities were in Lord Ramachandra's Leela also. So these things are interesting. Anyone have anything to say?
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. It was very nice. Thank you so much for explaining the visions and the Devavati's question. And I would request anyone has any questions, they can ask now.
No questions, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Shivanand Prabhu.
All right, Prabhu. Thank you also for listening.
Okay,
it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear. Well, go ahead. If anyone has questions, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Ram Shri Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, very nice, Prabhuji. Good, you read all the headlines of the chapter, translations of the slokas, and it was very wonderful, to know what's in the chapter, and it's a very strong, to keep track or who is whose son and whose daughter, and like that. And so many names and so many.
Yeah, many names.
Yeah. Oh, it was very wonderful.
And then this whole thing leads into satis and daksha and the whole sacrifice performed by daksha and the whole story about daksha and Lord Shiva. So these are descendants, these are people who are at the beginning of the universe, and they're populating the universe, and this is another order of the development of the universe. The universe develops over time, and part of it's all due to population from all these great personalities. Okay, I'll sign off there, and we'll...
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Haribol, Mataji.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Okay. All right. Thank you all very much for listening. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat pranam.
Prabhuji.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Krishna.
All right, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Please engage yourself in devotional service.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.